Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar co-hosted by the New York Oracle Users Group and Oracle partner Viscosity North America. My name is Katie Barnes. I am an account manager here at Viscosity. For those of you who might not be familiar with us, Viscosity is a full Oracle stack consulting firm with a core expertise in Oracle database, including RAC, Apex, zero downtime migrations, performance tuning, and high availability. We also have decades of experience with infrastructure, including engineered systems. During today's presentation, feel free to submit any questions that you may have to our presenter in the questions and chat prompt that you should see on the lower right side of the GoToWebinar panel. And our presenter today will address what she can during the presentation. We'll also reserve a few minutes at the end of the webinar as well to answer any unaddressed questions if time allows. Be on the lookout from an email from me later this afternoon with a copy of the slide deck and a recording of today's webinar. Representing the New York Oracle Users Group is Coleman Leviter. Coleman is going to introduce you to NYOUG and to today's speaker as well. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and pass it over to you, Coleman.
Thank you, Katie. Welcome everybody to our webinar series co-hosted with Viscosity. Today we're going to discuss about more Apex, and I just want to introduce you to New York Oracle Users Group. We were formed in 1984 for exchange, ideas, assistance, and support among users of Oracle products. You can connect with us on Twitter, Meetup, LinkedIn, Facebook, and of course our website, NYOUG.org, where you'll see all the presentations, both MP4 and the PowerPoint presentations of this webinar series co-hosted with Viscosity. And one final note, thank you, Viscosity, for co-hosting this series of webinars with the New York Oracle Users Group. And now a little bit about Karen. She's president of TH Technology, a consulting firm focused on Oracle technology in general, Oracle Apex a specialty. Karen is an ACE director, ODTUG board member, Apex gal, frequent user group volunteer, and conference presenter. And you can reach her at her Twitter account at TH Technology, and of course she'll be posting her email address as well. And again, thank you, Viscosity, for co-hosting a series of webinars. Karen?
Hey, I dropped that out. Perfect. Hello, everyone. Thanks for taking some time out of your day. And thank you, Katie and Coleman. I love doing stuff for NYOUG. This is me, TH Technology. Click in and do your thing. I want to do a shout out to NYOUG and Viscosity for hosting this series. I think it's real important that we all keep in touch with the technology changes that are going on. None of our tech slowed down because of COVID or going virtual. So, and going virtual is not as simple as everyone thinks. So it's real. I'm very grateful that NYOG and Viscosity are bringing this webinar series to us. It's not easy to do it as smoothly as they make it look. So many, many thanks to you guys. TA Technology is my company. I did not start out in IT. I started out in mechanical engineering and got detoured. And actually before that, I was in kinesiology. So I really got detoured along the way. But I love what I do. I love giving back. And along the way, I volunteered. And here I am. Definitely volunteer for your user groups and stay sane. A little bit more about me. To stay sane during this crazy time, there's a little dot in here. I don't know if it's right there. That's me in my happy place. Whatever you need to do to stay sane, we're almost out of this, I think. Maybe if we don't get a third wave or a fourth wave or a new strain. So just stay sane, do whatever you need to do. Vaccinate if that's in your cards, and more virtual learning at InSync is actually happening now. I have a presentation on Visual Builder tomorrow. This goes through April 1st, and then later on, at the end of June into July, we'll have 2 weeks, again virtual, because it's just not safe to get us all together yet. Okay, so 21, so be watching for that. This is where I ask you guys, what's your Apex experience, what versions you're on, who's the JavaScript experts in the crowd, and so I have to kind of guess that you've done some Apex, you're on version 5.1 and higher because that's where you get the grids. You've done some stuff with grids, but not a whole ton, and you're not like the Damigan, Scott Wesley, Vincent Morneau kind of level. So standardize your grids. Why? Just to save yourself time, make things look the same, and we're going to talk about a whole bunch of that. Very quickly, Apex gives us a really, really nice sandbox. I need to upgrade this because it's really gotten to be a very, very, very nice sandbox to play in. And but because Apex is basically PL SQL and JavaScript widgets producing HTML pages, you can put whatever you want in there. You can go to town and build the pyramids using whatever you want. When you do that, things, and you go outside the sandbox, things might not upgrade, they might break on the next version. You may have to revisit it and tweak it. So I always advocate staying in the sandbox, and most of what I show you today, i.e. standardizing, I recommend you stay in the sandbox. Use things that are documented, use things that are repeatable, use things that are recommended, use things that will upgrade. That's going to make your life easier, and it's going to make it easier for you to adopt the next new thing that comes along in the next new version, which they're releasing pretty quickly now. So I just want to remind everyone, Apex is low code. So while you can write as much as you want, you don't have to, except when it comes to customizing interactive grids. Now we have to start writing some JavaScript with, which if most of you are PL SQL developers, maybe forms developers before, maybe you're not as comfortable with some of this JavaScript stuff. So let's talk about how to make it easier for you. Quick reminder that grids came about because those of us that long ago used tabular forms for anything editable in a tabular form. Then interactive reports came out and we said, please, please, please make them editable. And I want to do this, and I want this, I want cascading list of values, and they gave us grids. And then they've told us that in the future, everything will be grids. Well, that's not going to happen until all the things you can do with an interactive report are achievable, doable. It's not all going to be declarative, but they're in an interactive grid. So we got a few versions. The architecture behind the scenes, if you care, if you like to understand the full depth of why do I have to do it this way, Karen, I recommend John Snyder's hardlikesoftware.com blog. Starting in 2016, which is when this came out, he starts talking about how these grids are organized underneath the hood. If you don't want to see that, read that much, then just know everything in blue here is a widget, is a JavaScript widget. Now that's a huge departure from Apex being PL SQL generating HTML pages. The grid is the first kind of, I don't want to call it a pure JavaScript. It's the first Apex element that is so much of a JavaScript widget, and we'll see more and more of that going forward. The yellow are instances of that widget, and the green are models. Whenever you hear model in the context of this next hour, think data. That model is my data set. So in an interactive grid, we have the grid model, which is a tabular view. We could have a group by view, and we'll have the grid model is the data that's in that group by view. You'll have your chart model. You may be in icon mode. Then you have an icon model, different views of your data. So I'm sure you all got that, but you're always welcome to download the slides. And there's a demo app that you'll see shortly, and that I'm happy to give that to you as well, with the caveat that it's not ready for production use. That's on you to do all that. It's demo presentation ready. So with grids, as we did with interactive reports, we have lots of declarative things we can do, and across the board, do it declaratively first. The days of writing lots of code because we get paid by lines of code, and now I'm dating myself, are over. And there are lots of declarative settings. There's a common complaint that, well, I don't have as many declarative settings as I do in interactive reports. And yes, that's true. And there's a reason for that. But we do have a lot of declarative things here and a lot of power, and it's your job to be familiar with what all these settings do and to actually use them. And when you're in a, if you're the only developer, you still need to standardize, because what you do today in one application, in your next application, if you've got the same set of users, you want it to be similar. End users like things similar. If you've got one setting off, they're like, that one's different. And they'll even tell you, even though it's the button is displayed on the right, the icon is on the right instead of the left, your end users will tell you that this one performs faster than that one. It's their job. They're users. That's what they do. And appearance is very important to users because they're doing their job and they want things the same. Not everything is declarative though. Simple things like turning a column header off, adding, removing toolbar buttons, the action menu options, all of these are, oh my gosh, column advanced JavaScript. And when I first saw this, I'm like, oh man, but don't worry, we're gonna make it easy. So most grids out there are gonna be a combination of declarative and customizations, and we can do things like, that's a grid. Not all grids are editable, folks. There may be reasons you don't want your grid editable. This one, all you can do is filter and save, but that simplifies it. And then maybe we don't want them to do all the searching and rearranging and all that stuff. So simple option. Another one here, I've got all the rest of the bells and whistles, and I moved the filter button up so they don't have to click actions and filter, and a custom help button. Simple. You can change what goes in the row actions menu, and hello and give me the total salary is probably not what you need for your business purpose, but the example is simply to show you that it can be done. This one, someone complained that the delete button's actually in the row actions menu, and they didn't like that, so we put a delete button up here that looked more like tabular forms to their end users. That's what they wanted, so that's what we did. This one I like a lot because we've got the obvious actions in the row actions column, and this column, the star menu, that is not a customization. In your interactive grids, every column behaves like an item. So this is just an item plugin. If I could get my thing, it's just an item plugin. It's not a customization. I could have, you can use anything that's an item plugin, you should be able to use in your interactive grid. That gives us a lot of power here that we did not have in tabular forms. Columns. Yeah, the same thing. I mentioned this a little bit before. If you have 5 different developers, you give them the same assignment, build a grid out of this table or this query, you're very likely going to get 5 different grids, unless you have some kind of, this is where our buttons go, this is where the icons on the buttons go, this is the size of buttons we use, this is the color of buttons we use. even 5 developers on the same application, you're going to get 5 different grids. Probably not good, because remember, our users, they like things the same. If you have multiple developers on the same application in the same organization, in different applications in the same organization, you still have to communicate and share what you're doing to get that commonality, get that repeatability, get that. We want our users to feel warm and fuzzy about what we do. And that's 5 developers. Just think about what you do today, last week, a month ago, 6 months ago, 5 days ago. Could be 5 different grids. 5 apps could be slightly different. There might be reasons for that different, but unless I have standards and hold to that standards, I'm going to drive myself nuts when I go back and look at the thing I did 6 months ago and go, why did I do it that way? You know, have standards is going to make your life easy. So I'm going to show you some examples of different appearance, different functions, different column names, order size, and stuff happens. Even if you have standards, stuff happens. But then it's easier to fix them when a bug shows up. We do not want our end users looking like this. The poor guy's losing his hair, he's gritting his teeth, his dentist is going to want him in soon for a cracked tooth. We don't want end users looking like that. And more, even more so, we don't want to look like that. So user experience, I've talked about. We want consistent, repeatable, the same. I don't have to use a manual. I know this means this, and this button will be there, and I go here to do this. We want our users sane, and we want them saying happy things about our Apex applications. We want all our developers, we want to be able to do things fast, get it done so we can go out and go skiing or play in the sun or plant flowers, whatever you do, and we want to stay sane. Simple things. Now you're waiting for me to give you the direction. Column names, types, the order of columns on a page, the size of your headers and the data, the font you use if you don't use the default fonts, the toolbar configuration, button names, placement, are they right or left? Is the icon on the right or left? Add row versus add employee. The default is add row. If you do add employee in your employees grid, then do add department in your department grid versus add row. Just make it consistent, whichever thing you do. If you say add employee, then make it add employee in all your grids, as opposed to add emp and add employee and add row. Just it makes it look more professional and makes things smarter. Use the same pagination, use the same region height if you're using scroll there. Use the same number of rows displayed. Use the same shading. People get used to seeing alternate row shading. If you have it in half your reports and not the other, then they're going to say, why? Why? Because that's our job. As developers, if I have standards, I'm not guessing, I'm not reinventing the wheel, I'm following the directions. I'm using my brain power for those things that I need to, and the rote things like the settings on my grid, I don't have to reinvent. And if there is JavaScript that's going into my grid, then I know it's been blessed, it's been sanitized, I'll have a minified version, and I don't have to waste my time doing that for every grid. So let's jump in and look at some things in a second here. In any standardization, not just grids, anything, anywhere, this is the obvious slide. It's just a reminder, and you kind of laugh, it's so simple, but you gotta tell people these things. We talked about this, template columns. I want to jump in and do things. I wish I could give you a cheat sheet of grid settings. You have to build your own, because I don't know what you use in your company, in your development. You could build one grid and copy it to other places. You could build a grid plugin for your organization. This is our grid that looks, this is the look we want, and here's the settings, and copy that around. You can use a plugin. There are plugins out there to make some of the JavaScript customizations easier. You can use a common configuration file, and I will show you all of that. Well, I'm not going to show you plugins, but I will show you that shortly. So let's jump in. I'm dying to get into this. And this is, hopefully it's still on. This is a sample grids application that I've had out there for a while. I keep adding to it. It's got a bunch of basics, talks about charts. There's a whole bunch of different charts in grids if you haven't looked at them. Thing with charts, not all of them apply to every grid that you put out there. And there's no declarative way to turn off charts that don't apply. So you may have to train your users a little bit in that. There's stuff on APIs. What we're going to look at, there's more examples of customizations in here, and there's slides in the slide deck that will give you more examples. If anyone hasn't seen the Interactive Grid Cookbook app by John Snyder's, download that one, read away, wonderful morning coffee or bedtime reading. There's some really awesome stuff in there, and I look at some of it and I go, why would anyone want to ever do that? 2 models on the same page, that's just crazy. And lo and behold, one of my clients came up with a use case for 2 different models on the same page that I ended up using some of that. So we're going to talk about standardizing. So what happens when there's no standards? And this is that example of same grid on employees. Someone first guy just took the defaults, standard grid. This one kind of changed some things. Employee number, name, move some columns around. Some things are justified, some aren't. I'd like these simple things center justified. I'd like my heading center justified. Funky date format, is that your company's date format? I don't know. Let's see, what did the next person do? They said now we're only going to display 5 rows, and then you have to scroll, and it's empnum instead of employee number. Hire date spelled differently. Salary date is right a lot. You know, even simple things like, is it yes, no, or is it why no? Or is it a switch with the on off button? We see that a lot more now. And then this guy gave it, prettied it up some, and still prettied it up, but couldn't spell employee. Hire, didn't do anything with the names here. So which is right? You know, it's just sloppy. If it's the same data, so which one is do my users want? I don't know. What's right for your organization? So what you need to do is figure out what works for your organization. Now, I was working for a client. We were doing an Apex upgrade from 4.1 to 19.2. We had a lot of tabular forms with really ugly JavaScript and stuff in it, and lots of PL SQL array processing to do what we wanted to do. And the direction was update these to grids, and we got partway through, and we said, well, why didn't you upgrade? And the response was, I cannot give my team, my users anything that doesn't have a delete button where it used to be. There's no delete button here. I cannot put that in front of my users. And I said, whoa. First of all, the delete button is here. I delete row, and then I go about my way, and I may delete multiple rows. And then I can even, revert things. If I decide not to delete that row, I can revert changes and go back. They said, no, we are not. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. I said, okay, hang on. So before you throw out the whole technology, let me show you something. So what I did is I looked at the interactive grid cookbook. I read the examples. I read some stuff. Here, I need, where's my grid? Where's my attributes? Where to go? Oh, here. Here's my attributes. Usually I have them, I like this in 22 and higher. We have attributes over here. Now I'm going to steal some code from my help. And this is some grid configuration code. I'll go through it later. And that's going to go into my JavaScript initialization code, advanced JavaScript code. And I'm going to redo the grid configuration too. Keep this search field and the regular button. I'm going to keep the add employee button, and I'm calling it add employee. I'm going to pull that delete button up on the top page. And then I'm going to keep the save button, the refresh button, and the reset report buttons. And that's all this does. So all I've done is redefine my toolbar and return that configuration. And how did I learn this? I read the examples. I went to read the interactive grid cookbook. I looked at different help on apex.world. So lo and behold, now I have a grid that has delete selected rows. So if I want to delete those rows, I just delete. Now, this is cool, but I get 20 different applications. Actually, we have more like 40 applications and n number of grids across that. We don't want everybody writing that JavaScript code. So what to do there? Well, we want to do some standardizing. So before I go into that, there was a question that came in. What are grid options available for data entry forms? The main thing with an interactive grid, and I'll do this on the no standards page. Well, I can show you. And this is by default. Remember, in earlier versions, we did not have that. Changes may not be saved. I remember I had deleted those rows. I'm happy leaving without. So that basically any grid can be made editable. Let me just show you the easy way. It's in my grid, in my attributes. It's the grid view that is the editable view. The group by right now is not editable. Icon view, others. Your grid view is the editable one. So this edit enabled is how I make a grid editable. And you can see when it's off, I don't have a bunch of, I'm confusing it right now because I'm clicking around. But when it's off, these add row and other options, the edit authorizations, they don't apply. But when it is, so that's what makes your grid editable. Would be just that simple edit on. And then there's a whole myriad of things that help it go from there. And while I'm here in Developer 2000 forms, I know how old you are. We're creating a class and we assign class to fields. If the class property changed, it will reflect. So you're making a certain field, a certain column editable or not. Yes, I can make certain columns editable or not. And actually, if you want to see more about this, I can make it display only here. I can make it query only. And so there's lots of ways to do that in grids. You can control which column, which field. Doesn't have to be based on a table. Lots of different options. And if you want to learn more, just contact me afterwards and I'll go through all those options, because it'd be really neat to do the one-to-one comparison, Developer 2000 forms to grids, and see what carries over. So cool. So let's go back to our, we did this delete button thing, but we don't want to have everybody writing that JavaScript, and we don't want to do it everywhere. We want it to be the same, and we got a lot of things to do it on. So what I'm going to do is take a JavaScript file, and I'm going to include that in my application JavaScript files, just where you would normally put some. I don't know how far down I have to go for that. So there's my standards file. And that standards file looks like this. And it's not going to make any sense, but I have this common grid config function that says a bunch of different stuff. If we have class sequence number, do this. If we have class no reorder, if we have class filter only, then do a bunch of stuff. Lots of neat things in here. And what we're going to do here is I've included this file. So now I'm going to go back to my page, and instead of writing a ton of JavaScript code in the attributes, all I'm going to do here is again, this is not a good practice to put your cheat stuff for your presentation in your help text, but it's handy so that I'm not typing. Help text should be in help text. That's what I mean by this app is not production ready, but you're welcome to have it. So what I'm putting here is the reference to that function that's in my file. Let me go back to the top. Sorry for my scrolling. I have, so it's iGrid app, common grid config, and that's what I put in here. Now that by itself isn't going to buy me anything, right? I get the same old grid. But watch this. I'm going to add some classes. And I add those classes to the grid. CSS classes, let's do add del save. And save and run. And now I've got that, it didn't do it. It didn't do it. What did I not do right? Oh. What am I? Oh, because I spelled it wrong. There you go. Made me very scared. And now we have that same grid. Note to self. There's now a declarative setting to remember the position there. So now I haven't written any JavaScript code. I've just included a file, included the reference to the file in the advanced JavaScript, and added a class. Now, if I want to change this grid, maybe, what is it? Filter only? I think that's the, and then maybe I want a sequence number. Then, nah, nope, I didn't spell that filter only right. Filter only grid. Filter only grid. You'd think I would have these memorized by now. This is why you copy paste. So now I have that filter only config. And maybe I have a, I'd want to add a help button on all my grids, but, and that, notice this one, even though my grid is still editable, because I didn't give them a save button, they can't save. So that's not best practice here. So you have to think about what you do and how things get done in combinations. So very quickly, I've been able to do some interesting changes. And say I did filter only and save. So what do you think is going to happen now? Any guesses? Any guesses? I know, so my guess doesn't happen. Yeah. So we got the add, delete, save. And you'll say, well, that was the second one, so that's why that one happened. let's do it this way, and maybe we'll get to filter only. And my point here is not, that you would be doing this, adding multiple classes. My point is to explain what is actually happening. We still got the add, delete, save. Why? Because in my file, it applied the thing for one. It sees both the classes, and what's happening is it's reading this file and applying. And the filter only comes first, and then the add delete one is second. So it's always going to overwrite. Isn't that nice? My spam call said political call. Sorry for that noise. So pay attention to the order of things in your file, and you may be able to take advantage of layering. But in this case, since we're rewriting the toolbar for each of those classes, only the last one stayed because it's the last one in my file. Okay, so let's apply these standards. And you're going to have different settings and stuff as well. But now, if I take this same page that has all those different grids on it, I can do things like, now remember my file is already included. I can go here, select all 4 or however many I have, and go down to here. And I wish I had that copied. I'm gonna have to, well, what's it called? TH Tech. This is why you copy things. iGrid app, common IG config. Let's go back over here, down to here. I think you get the idea. Common IG. So config. This is why you don't type. So there we go. That's that there. And then over here, if I do these classes and save, then we will have all of these guys set the same way. Now, wait a minute, what's going on here? Well, this grid is not editable, so you don't get a delete button. Pretty neat, huh? Let's see what else. For whatever reason, our delete isn't enabled here. Maybe I don't have the right role. Same thing in this guy, deletes. Well, I must have missed something. I must have a setting where delete isn't allowed. And so let's go down and check if we have a mix here. Yeah, see, delete wasn't allowed, so it didn't show up on that grid. So you can use your JavaScript file settings in combination with your declarative settings. Remember I said most grids are a combination of the two. And now we'll go back down here, and now we've got that delete button and save button, and we got an add row button back. So pretty cool, pretty cool. So now that I've got a row selected, it's enabled. Because I know somebody, I could hear you asking why. So that covers us for grids. I did show you the combination of declarative and how you kind of have to be careful. If I turn my delete off here, then I'm not going to get delete. An even better one is, hey, I did my toolbar, so I'm just going to turn the toolbar off. I don't need to show that. Maybe I'll even say edit's not enabled anymore. But where's that toolbar? here's the common thing. Since I defined my toolbar, I don't need to show the toolbar. And you can certainly do that, but the declarative is going to override. Your JavaScript is telling the interactive grid, what do I want my toolbar to look like? Your declarative just said, nah, don't show it. So two different things. So you got to be smart about using the declarative in combination with your customizations. Cool. And now I want to see another question. In grid, I want to make 2 to 3 tab-like chart and other report. Yes, it's possible. Let me take this question at the end, Cheyenne, because it's, and it is a customization you can make. You can, in your interactive grids, I just shut off this toolbar. Let's turn it back on. You can do tons of different things. Oh, and I don't have all my stuff on. So I'll address this afterwards. And yes, and a reset button showing in one grid and not in the other means that the manual setting is done, and that's exactly it, where I just showed you. I can turn toolbar off or on. All these declarative settings here are going to apply on top of what your JavaScript is. So I could say edits enabled or not. If I don't allow a refresh, this reset button, I can just uncheck this. I can have no actions field. So the search column, the actions menu itself, the reset button, and the save button, you can turn all of those on and off. If you want to be able to save, your save button has to be on. Otherwise, this little action is going to turn that save button off. Now, if you turn that off, you may have your own custom button that you want to save with. You want the save operation on, so make sure people up here are allowed that this edit is enabled. Otherwise, you can click a save button all you want, and the grid is going to say that's fine because I don't have edits enabled. So you got to know your combinations. So good questions coming in. So column wise, we can standardize columns too. And you may have noticed there's a combination here on purpose. Standard column, I think this is one. No. Oh, I didn't undo these. Okay, manager, by default, this is what you get. I can control break, I can aggregate, I can freeze, or I can eliminate the column altogether. You may not want all your users doing everything with all of those. For example, the emp number, I want them to do nothing, just like that. Name I have locked down. Job right now, they can do everything and they can sort. So how do we make these things? Well, you got the same kind of stuff for columns as you do for the grid itself. So let's look at job first because we haven't locked this down in any way. And we know this is a list of values. You got to scroll way down here. That this is just filtering at this point. How do we filter? Enable users too. This is a real interesting thing. Okay, I don't want people to hide. So this is one that's easy. We always want job displayed. Sort. Okay, you can now sort. Now I can control break. Interesting. Well, what if I want control break but not sort? You can't. Those go together. Those go together. You're stuck. So you have stuff here that you know, you're kind of stuck with there. So for emp, no. And sort was the other one. We want people to be able to, well, sort right there. Emp, no. So well, let's do this. Let's turn. What do we say? Manager was fully wide open. So we're gonna turn that one off. And I want to say no sort. I don't want them to do anything. So I'll turn that off. And so now we're good. We're good. Let me show you another little trick here. I should have reset this for you. Without that little piece of code, I've turned everything off declaratively that I can turn off right here. I don't even want people to export it. Whatever, right? So now in my manager field, still get this aggregate and freeze. There's no declarative way to turn off freeze. And the aggregate is weird. I would have to turn it off first and then turn this off to get rid of that one. I'm just showing you how it works, kids. And it still comes back. It's just, what's up with that? If I really want my column to behave like this, then I need to add this chunk of code that says no header activate. And this I got by reading the directions. Pretty cool. So now I'll be able to not activate here. I can sort if I want to, right? Watch this. Turn sort on. What's that do? Now I can sort, but I can't header activate. Interesting. Interesting. The other thing I can do here is I can drag and drop. What if I don't want my people to do that? Now what do I do? Well, that one is a grid level setting. And same as we did before, so let's go back to the grid. I happen to have over here set this thing called no reorder. Where is it? Right here. Config.default grid view options, reorder columns false. So I'm going to add that. Let's go over here. Where do we go first? We make sure we've included the reference to the function, which I have, right? That's in there. So now I can come to my grid and go and add that no reorder class. And that will effectively prevent me from reordering my columns. So now you notice that little thingy is gone, that little drag and drop. So interesting. So I probably showed you more than you wanted to know there, but obviously lots of combinations, lots of different things to consider in terms of what you want your end users to do and see in terms of a toolbar, and then in terms of columns and what they can do with the columns. And same as I did before, if you want these settings across all your columns, you can just select many and apply. And by using that no reorder, I don't have everyone in the company writing the JavaScript to do that. And more important, I'm not littering it around on every grid in every application. So let's go back to my slides for a sec. I see some really long questions in here, Cheyenne, and I'm going to get to them a little bit later. Brian, I can see the question, can I make cells under one column non-editable while column cells in the other are editable? And yes, I'm going to jump back and do that just so you see. I mentioned it previously. There are two ways to do that. One is I can make it display only. Probably the better way to do it so it doesn't post back is to say this is query only. And then you've got everything else it displays as whatever. I'm just now not able to edit that particular field. Actually, it's letting me edit it, but it's not going to post back. So I'd want to do the combination of both. Query only is really meant for those where it's not going to post back. And obviously, I can also do, there's a read only down here. I can do the read only always. So you've got lots of different options on how this goes. So different ways to achieve the same thing. Hope that helps there. And Shyam, your long question I will address later. I'm not sure what you mean by can we create web forms from an interactive grid. So we'll address that afterwards. But let's wrap up with a bunch of stuff here. I showed you a whole bunch of stuff, and mainly do as much as you can declaratively, do customizations that need to be JavaScript customizations in a common grid file, even if you only have 2. I guarantee in 2 months or 3 weeks or next year, you're going to have to go back and you're going to change that. And if you have a file, you're going to be able to change it in one place and swipe it out to everything else. You'll, of course, want to minify your file and do all the best practice stuff. Takes a little work to be cognizant of what these combinations of declarative and JavaScript do. So practice, play with it, have fun with it. I gave you code to limit buttons, turn things off, and this is just a reminder. There is no declarative way to turn off that freeze button. You have to do the no header activate if you want to get rid of that. What does freeze do? It freezes all columns to the left. So if I click a column way over on the right, everything to the left is going to freeze. Works just like an Excel spreadsheet in that respect. Plugins, just want to mention, plugins are wonderful. There's more than one out there. There's probably more out here now than when I last looked at this. Using a plugin to make your JavaScript easier does not standardize your grids. It just makes it easier for persons to customize. So in a way, using a plugin can proliferate a lot of different grid versions. So whether you use a plugin or not, you still have to standardize. Keep your end users happy. JavaScript APIs, I want to mention that as of 18.1, the JavaScript APIs are documented, which means they are supported. So go to this link, read them, do your homework. And I'm not going to go through all these slides, but here's a few examples. Here I'm adding to a toolbar, so I'm getting copy default toolbar. Toolbar find, I'm getting the actions, which is the first group where the search button and the search field are, and then I'm putting that filter button there. That's how I knew where to put that filter button. Get actions, invoke, save. So this is how we just do a save via JavaScript instead of a save button. Or we had a dynamic action on our custom save button. When you get into, I need to look at the value of a column. Now we're getting into the model. Remember I said model, think model, you think data. So I'm getting the model, get the value for the current record that was passed into this function for on leave. If that's yes, then we do a bunch of stuff. That's how I do some highlighting if the user is on leave. Get the selected record, get the e-name, and then I can say welcome to so-and-so. Get selected records. These are all the ones that are checked. Loop through the records, and if you're a PL SQL developer, you can read all this JavaScript. It does the same stuff. Apex.item salary, that gets me the salary item. If I want the value, I need the salary item dot get value. These are all documented APIs that you're going to have to become familiar with. This next section of these slides, and I'm not going to run through them all, show you different combinations of here's basically these guys. Change the column heading menu. Mention your plugins again. This is what it was. Here's the code. And there's the better look, and that's what you get. So let's go here because I want to wrap up some stuff. I think you've got the point that there's so many different options and declarative and JavaScript wise that you need, when you standardize, you need to say, here's our declarative settings that we use as a rule. And here's our JavaScript file that we use to customize our grids where we need to, and include that same file all around. Do change control on it because you're going to have to add and tweak things in it, I guarantee. And the beauty of it is you only need one JavaScript expert on your team. That person can share with others, or maybe you have several and you guys can all collaborate and do whatever part you want, but use that single file and copy it around so your stuff comes out the same. It makes it faster for everyone. So then we minify that file, include it, and then just add your classes on the grids. Really sweet. And this is what I showed you before, that common grid config. There's your sequence number, there's your filter only grid. Include it in the JavaScript files. Same stuff that I showed you before, and then add your classes. And then we want happy minions. We want happy users that aren't losing their hair. These guys still are, but I'm trying to turn my phone off for you. Sorry, folks, that should go now. Oh, if you make a mistake in your JavaScript code anywhere, be it in the JavaScript element on your grid or in your file, then voila, you just get no grid. Don't worry, you get this very helpful JavaScript message that says, hey, so just debug your JavaScript. And that's a whole nother practice, a whole nother session. Believe it or not, there's documentation on how to properly add JavaScript to your application. Read that stuff. In summary, have standards. And I can't tell you what they should be. Is that delete button that I showed you the best way to do it? Probably not for your organization. That just worked to get that particular organization into using grids and out of the HTML/DB land. So I recommend using a global config file. You're going to have to talk to each other to figure out what should go in there. You're going to have to play with it to figure out how it works with the declarative settings and what you want where. I wish I had a magic wand for you, but I don't. So in summary, stay sane as developers. Keep your end users happy because they keep us in business. We want happy minions all around. This is probably more fitting. I couldn't find one getting vaccinated. I'm sure it's out there somewhere. And that's just for grids. It's just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more that can be done with grids. As I said, the different charts and different other things. Someone said, is my sound on? I think it is. If it hasn't been, I'm really bummed. Basically, so your challenge is to go out to this, if you haven't already, install the Sample Interactive Grid app in your productivity apps. Download the Interactive Grid Cookbook and install that. And read the notes. John Snyder's put a lot of time into that Interactive Grid Cookbook. And one more thing I want to show you, because they've made it so easy for us to get there. JS APIs. It's always hard to type and present at the same time. But there you go. You will want to this API period. There we go. You'll want to read up on a lot of this stuff, and it's got tons and tons of examples and all the different things. And then apex.world, another great plus for place where you can go and get stuff. Cheyenne, I would love to go over your questions offline, because I know this one is getting a little more complicated than, well, is it possible to make a table example grid and create all the possible columns as per property, and developer can set the property yes, no, or value as desired for the particular page? And every, I think what you're saying is, can I set the properties of all the columns in one fell swoop? And yes, there is a way to do that with default grid. There's default grid view options, and then there's default column options. And using, there's grid view, obviously grid view, icon view. There's another one for default column options, and you can do some things there, but not everything. So hopefully that answers that. This is a ton of reading. I'm doing a thing now where I have to programmatically, when they add a column to add a row or delete a row in one grid, I have to add or delete the corresponding row in the other grid. And I'm doing more with the model. So there's the apex.model here. That's one. But what I need to do really is I'm getting into this model, and more fun reading for me. So it's exciting. It's fun stuff. Seriously, do your homework here and play. Have fun doing this. Really neat stuff. And if there's any more questions, I love doing this stuff. I love helping people. Email me or DM me on Twitter if you want the demo app. It's just a ton more great examples with different charts and icon view and detail view, and lots of different customizations. And the standardization file is in there. So with that, I want to again thank Viscosity and thank New York Oracle User Group. And one more plug: get involved with your user group. Get involved. Volunteer, say, Coleman, how can I help? That is the best way to learn stuff. Really, it's a lot of, and you'll meet cool people and have a lot of fun. I do references at the end here. Have fun, enjoy the rest of your day, and yeah, if I can help, let me know, and happy spring and stay safe out there. And with that, we can go back to Katie. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Karen. So yeah, if there are no other questions, we will go ahead and conclude today's webinar. Thank you again, Karen, so much for your presentation, and for Coleman and the New York Oracle User Group for co-hosting today's webinar. If you guys have any other questions, reach out to Karen, and you can also reach out to me for any questions regarding viscosity. Again, be on the lookout for an email from me later this afternoon. I will be sending out a copy of Karen's slide deck as well as a recording of the presentation today. If you guys are attending InSync this week, please come check out our booth. I'm headed there right after this webinar is concluded. We have some fun giveaways and things like that, so definitely come by and say hello. And with that being said, thank you guys so much for joining us today. We will see you at some of our next webinars, and yeah, thanks again.
Thanks, Katie. Yeah, anyone that can